Hello, this is a short video on how to get a database set up on Azure, how to test your Vaadin application with our database based on Azure, and then how to move our database or our application to Azure to work with the same database. So to start this off, I'm in my Azure portal here, and I'm going to go to create a resource, and I'm going to go to web app. I'm going to give myself a name here, so I'm going to call it video demo. That's going to create a new resource group for me. I'm going to leave this on Azure for Students. Okay, this one isn't available at the moment. There we go. Video demo 2. I'm going to Azure for Students, keep the resource group to that. I'm going to create a Windows, if that's an option for you, publish code, keep my service plan there, insights off, and I'm going to create. So we're creating our web application first, and from this web application we will then be able to create our database in the same resource group. So what's happening at the moment is this is deploying out my application. This will take a moment or two to work. Now this is going to be an empty application, but it's there for the moment. Okay, well that's happening. I'm just going to skip ahead until this deployment here has finished. Okay, and we're back, and we can see that deployment is finished, so I'm going to pin it to the dashboard as my values are coming up here, and we can see it's running, and it's a web application. If I go into this, I'll just do the preamble here first. This is our normal, what we need to do. So this is my application here. I'm just going to shrink that off to the side for a moment. I'm going to scroll down to my application settings, because it's going to be a Vaadin application that we're building. I'm going to need to change some of my settings here, so I'm going to go to Java version 8, leave this as the newest, and my web container will be the newest version of Jetty 9.3. So I'm going to click into that, and I'm going to click Save. And now we have a Java web application ready to run. Okay, let's go back to my home, to my actual dashboard. I'm going to create another new resource now. This is my database that I'm going to create. And I'm going to click on the SQL database here. I'm going to give my database a name, so I'm going to call this demo database. Let's call it demo DB. Azure for Students is my subscription. My group here is going to be demo for video demo 2. We'll go with that one. I'm going to select it as a blank database, and you can see here we've just 2 issues we have to fix. So the first one I'm going to fix is configure our server. We need to set up a database server. I'm just going to attach it to this existing one here. Actually, I'll attach it to this one here. Okay, so that's been attached. The pricing tier, I'm going to go with basic. We're not going to exceed this workload, but just to be on the safe side, we're going to make sure that we don't eat too much of our credit, and we're going to apply this. And everything else can be left as default. Right. Now, the database creation takes a couple of minutes, so we are going to come back in a moment when all of that database has been created. Okay, and we're back again, so I'm just going to pin my resource to the dashboard. Where am I here? So I'm going to pin that database to the dashboard as well, just so that I'm able to see it. So I can see here's my application I'm going to be using, here's my database I'm going to be using. And if I click into my database at the moment, I can see that it's up and it's running. However, I haven't put anything in there. If I were to go into the query editor to have a look at the content inside it, I need to log in with my details. I have no tables in my database. There's nothing there, so I need to go and generate that. So I'm going to create a one table database. So I'm going to go to Macaroo. I'm going to create a database that will have an ID number, it'll have a first name, a last name, an email address, car model, it has to be car model, and we don't need this one here. Oh, no, I'll add another one here. Car price. So we can kind of guess what this is going to be. We'll keep track of what they are. And here we're going to deal with car. I was going to go with price. There we go. And we're dealing with, first of all, we're dealing with euros. Let's say we have cars that are worth more than €0 and more than €10 also. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say that, let's say our minimum car value we have inside is 5,000 and our maximum car value is 100,000. That's 10, that's 100. Okay, that's all I want here. I'm going to create 25 rows of data. I'm going to want it to be in SQL format, and I want it to create the table for me as well. And this table is called car data. Okay. Download the value. So I go in here, I can get my download. There we are. Open with browse. Let's just open it with Notepad++. You open it with any text editor really. So I can see my data here. I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to go back to my query editor, and I'm going to paste that query in. So now I have my table created. Scroll across here. I can see I've got an int, I've got varchar, varchar, varchar. That's all fine. I'm happy with all of that. And if I run this now, that will tell me that 25 rows have been affected. If I refresh my database, I can see that I have now a car data table on my database, and that's all I want. I'm perfectly happy with this. So I'm going to return to my overview. That's fine. I've saved everything. That's fine. And I'm going to see that my server's here. What you also need to do, so there are 3 things you need to do to get your database up and running. The first thing we need to do is actually put data in it. The second thing we need to do is we need to go to our set server firewall, and we're going to add client IP. Now this is only applicable, and we're going to do a save as well. The adding the client IP is only applicable when we're going to run a local version. So we're going to run the application from localhost, but it's going to be reaching out to our Azure portal to get access to the database. Once we launch this app online, we don't need to have this, especially since it's going to be based off an Azure platform itself anyway. Okay. Go back to the demo of this again. Okay, so I have all of my data in there. I have said that for the laptop I'm on, the network I'm on, this will allow me to create a new application, or sorry, it'll allow me to have access to it from my IP address. So what I need to do now is I need to actually create an application for it. So inside Visual Studio Code, which I'll go here for a minute, I have created a generic Vaadin application. I've done nothing to this except for set it up. If I were to run this in localhost, so if I were to open up my terminal and have a look here, Palm XML is there, so I'm going to mvn jetty : run and run that. We will see that this is the stock application that is always generated when we create a jetty application. Okay, so we're nearly set up. And we can see that Jetty started now, so if I go back to my browser and I open up a new portal or a new page and go to localhost, we will see I have this very generic value in here that works the way we've been using our localhost up until now. Okay, So to be able to edit my database, to access my database from application, I need to do a couple of things. So I've set up my database, that's step 1. I've added data into my database, that's step 2. I've enabled this current machine's IP address on my connection server, which allows this machine that I'm on now to access the Azure database. So that's step 3. Step 4 is I need to go into my POM XML file, and I need to scroll down to see where we have on line 71 in our stock one we have build. I'm going to go up here, and in between the closing tag for this dependency and the opening or the closing tag for dependencies, I'm going to put in one more dependency, and this is basically going to signify that we have an extra piece required for our application. Remember that the point of the POM XML is it's going to inform Maven as it's building this application that we need certain things, and one of the things we need is a way of accessing our database. So we need to download that specific driver. So inside our group ID, we're going to have com.microsoft.sql server. Okay, so that's going to be our value there. We can actually tidy this up into one line to make it look a little bit neater. So that's our group ID there. We need to have our artifact ID. So you can see that we're following the same format that is written here. So we have our group ID and our artifact ID, and what will happen is when we go to build our application, it is going to go off and generate whatever requirements we need, and it'll go and source any extra drivers, for example our SQL server here. And this SQL server is going to be called MSSQL-JDBC. So it's going to be going and getting the Microsoft SQL Server Java connection for our database, and we need to also highlight what version we're using. So our version here is going to be 6.4.0.J8. That's just indicating what version of Java our database will be intending to make its connection true. This block here is available on the GitHub, so you don't need to type it out every time. You can just copy and paste it in. But this will allow us to build our application and get everything up and running. So when we go clean and then we go install, what's going to happen is it's going to download any extra variables that we need here, any extra drivers we need here, and add them into our project. Without this dependency being added in, we could have all of the correct code to access our database. However, it would not know the piece of software it needs to access it, the driver it needs to access it to actually get to the database. So, very importantly, we need to go and we need to save our file. So now we can see this is an X and not a 0, and we want to rebuild, absolutely. And it's going to go off and it's going to update. Because the Jetty server is running, it's going to continuously update any amendments that I make. Okay, so that's all we need to do with the POM XML. I can actually close down this file here, and since I'm only going to be using my UI Java, I can close down the overview. I don't need that, and I can shrink back the folder to give me a little more room, and I can close that out of the way there as well. Okay, so what I need here is I need to have some content. So inside my class, inside my initiation method, I'm going to use connection called connection is equal to null. And remember, because this is reaching out to an external data source, the same way we did it when we were dealing with file access, or when you were dealing with file access last year, you have to put this content into a try catch. But if we put it into a try catch, it means the variables created inside those curly braces are bound to that scope. So if we create our connection object up at the top here, and we set it to null, it's an empty object, and we can just try to instantiate it inside our try catch block, whereas we still would have access to the variable outside of the try catch block. Okay, we also need to have here a string. String. Can't type this morning. Connection string. Okay, and so our string connection string needs to have a value. So let's put our value in. Our value, well, what is the connection string? The connection string is going to be how do we get access? What are all the features we need to get access to our database? And rather than having to remember any of that, I'm going to go back to my portal here, so back to my demo app here, and I'm going to go to connection strings. So I'm going to click on this, which will open up a new window, and I can see here I've got ADO.NET, JDBC, ODBC, and PHP. The one that I'm interested in is JDBC. And I'm going to copy all of that, and I'm going to paste it in as the content of that string. Now it's very long, you can see that this is scrolling that way there, so I'm going to make this a little more usable by closing off there, going plus, new line. I'm just going to try to align this so that it looks somewhat presentable there. And I'm not going to do every subsection as a new line, but just enough that it'll make it a little bit easier to read. There we are. Okay, right, so I've split my connection string using concatenation symbols over multiple lines. This is all good to go, except for one thing. I need to change this to the password I set up for that database, which was the same one we used in class, which is cloud dev123. If you are setting up your database for the very first time, or if you're setting up your database server rather for the very first time, you will need to select a user and password. Your password must contain at minimum uppercase letters, lowercase letters, and either symbols or numbers. So pick something that you remember, but pick something that satisfies all those requirements. So at this point I have my connection string and I have my connection object. What I need to do now is, and I may as well keep doing it here to fill in all of my content, I need to, actually I can't do it here because I need to put it inside my layout. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all of the content that we have here, the buttons, the layout, get rid of all of that. I'm just going to have no content there, add components, don't do that at all. I'm just going to have my connection string here, or my connection to my database here. So I'm going to create my try block. I'm also going to create my catch block while I'm here. My catch block should be obviously exception E, same as what you would have done in class. So inside my try block, this is where I'm going to attempt to connect to my database. So I'm going to say connection is equal to driver manager dot get connection, and inside here I'm going to pass in my connection string. Okay, so it's going to pass in this variable up here into this connection, and that's going to attempt to connect to my database. If that connects to my database, it will add a particular label. So what we're going to do here is let's add a new label. Let's go layout dot add component, and it's going to be a new label. So I say new label, open our brackets here, and we're going to say just something very simple, connected to database. Okay, so if it's successful, it'll connect to the database, and that's all we need to do. And actually, you know what, we can add some extra content in there as well. We can tell them what database we've actually connected to by going plus connection dot get catalog, and that'll just tell me what database I'm actually connected to, which should be the one that we created for this example. And if that doesn't work, what I want to print out a similar message, but obviously one that will highlight that I haven't connected correctly. So this was a, I'm actually just going to do my normal one you would do here inside an exception. We're going to say e.getMessage. And it's going to print out whatever value that I have there, and I have the correct number. Okay, so let's save this. Now, let's go back to my folder here. Let's do another, actually, well, let's see if it's automatically refreshed. If I refresh this now, this is my local host, bear in mind, so I'm not running this off Azure yet, but it is connecting to an Azure database. If I refresh this now, it should tell me no suitable driver found. Now, so what has happened here is one of two things. Let's eliminate the quicker one first. The quicker one is I need to give time for my application to download and get the driver, and I didn't give it enough time. So let's go and refresh one more time, and it's telling me no suitable driver. So the second option is, if we go back to our code, we need to do an install, and what install will do is it's going to force the application to be rebuilt, and where we have our POM XML where it said please build in our database drivers, they will get forced into the build, and it should have my connection string at that point. Okay, so the Jetty server started. I'm going back to my browser. I don't need Macro anymore, so I'll just use this tab. Localhost 8080. And I should see now connected to database, demo database. So there was no issue with my driver. It wasn't that I wasn't able to find the server, it's just that you needed to restart my Jetty server, and I've done that at this point. Now that is good. I'm connected to the database, but I'm not actually able to get any content out of the database yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my code here. Let me close that one down there. I close this one down too, and I'm going to edit this. So I am going to send a query into my database to request some content back, and then when I get content, I'm going to process that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that line. I don't need that line there, but I'm going to use something called a result set. In programming, whenever you query the database and you're expecting content back, it's sent back in the form of a result set object. So connection dot create statement. Okay, so create statement dot execute statement. Sorry, execute query. And you can see here that it's expecting my SQL running this. So I'm going to do a very, very simple SQL. I'm going to go select star from car underscore data, because I think that's the name of my database I created. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. And that is going to be a string. So it goes in the format of a string. And that's all I need there. So I can just go semicolon. That is my entire statement. That is going to bring back a result set here. Okay. Now you can see this is underlined as red. So what's happened here is it hasn't actually picked up the import up at the top. Just to make sure I don't get these anymore, I'm actually going to go up to my imports at the top, and you can see it's added in a couple here. But let me simplify all of this. I'm going to say, rather than .connection, .driver manager, and .result set, I'm just going to go .asterisk. And anything that comes in now should be applicable for that. You can see if I go back down, result string is now no longer underlined in red. This is underlined in green because I haven't used it yet, but I'm going to use it now. Okay, so the result set is a normal Java object, which means it's going to inherit from the core Java object class, which means I have a very nice little feature here that I can go while ors dot next. Okay, so we can use that. So basically, while there's something left in the result set, what I want to do is, well, I'm going to add a component, and that component is going to be a new label. And inside the label, what am I going to add into it? Well, I'm going to add in exactly what we have. So I'm going to add in ors.getString. And as you can see here, it's looking for the column name. So I'm going to give it the column name of each of the values that I have here. So I have first underscore name. I'm actually going to need to go back and double check what those values were, but actually, thankfully, I have this here. Let me zoom that out. I can see I've got ID. I don't need to print out the ID, but I do want first name, last name, email, car model, and car price. So I'm going to say first name, and then so that'll only give me one column, but I want all of the others. So I'm going to say plus plus and a space in between this as well. So we're going to have a column separated by a space, and we can just keep adding this in here. So we're going to have then ors.getString. And here we're going to have last name, and then we're going to go plus space there, and a plus, and we can move down, and I'm just going to very quickly copy that and put that in 1, 2. Okay, so we will have first name, last name. Let me go back and check what we have here. Email, car model, and price. So we're going to have email, car model. And the last one I need to do is that, which I'll just put in a new line, so keep it all nice and simple. So this is going to be email. And then here we're going to have car underscore model. Model. And here we're going to have car underscore price. And I don't need this bit at the end. Okay, so that's going to build up a new label. I'm missing one bracket, there we are. It's going to build up a new label of each of them. Now each of these should be strings here, so I should actually put these in as strings. That's why they're coming up as red. You can see here how we're over it. It cannot be resolved as a variable, but if it's a string, well then we're absolutely fine. Okay, so this is going to go through, and while there's something left inside my result set, it is going to get each of the column names, add them as a label, and then it'll move on and add another label, and add another label, and add another label. Okay, and so it should do this for 25 rows that we have. Okay, so let's test this on my local host first, and then the last step is actually just uploading it to our Azure portal. So let me refresh that. And again, this is going to be a scenario if I refresh too quickly. So if I give it a moment or two and refresh again, I now get, you can see here are all of the values. Now it's not beautifully laid out, but it is retrieving my data from the database. And you can see that I've got all the data here. I've got the name, I've got the email address, I've got the car model, and then I've got the price that we might have as well. Okay? And so the last thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to package this to be distributed on my Azure portal. So I'm going to go and go clean, I'll go off and clean, and while that's running in the background, I'm also going to run install just to load that up ready. And I'm going to leave that there for a moment. That's going to take a moment or two to actually build up. I'm going to go to my browser. I'm going to go to my Azure portal. I'm going to go back home because I don't need to look at the database again. However, what I do need to look at is this app service here. This is the one, remember, this is the one I created. I have it pinned here, video demo 2. And if I go in here, this will reinforce what we looked at of using the Kudu server to upload. I'm going to go down to, on the left hand side here, I'm going to go down to advanced settings, or sorry, to development tools, and then click on advanced tools. I'll take a moment to open up. And then I'm going to click on go. And that's going to bring me into this server here. What I want is I want to go to the debug console, and I want to go to command. And this will bring me to a local site here. I'm going to go to site, to www root, and to web apps. And you see I've got a root folder here, but I haven't got a WAR file here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my desktop, where I've held this file. It's in databases. and then I've held it in new folder and demo for video. And if I go into my target, I can see there's my snapshot, my video for demo. It was built at 11:39, so just a moment ago. And I'm going to rename this to root, all capitals, .war. Put it over to the side. And I'm just going to drag and drop it across. That is going to upload itself to the database. And you can see here, it is about 12 megabytes in size. It's been uploaded just at this point we are at now. My application is up and running there. Okay, so I have deployed I've built my application, I've tested it on a local host using a cloud-based database. I've compiled it into our WAR file. I have renamed the WAR file to root. I have dragged and dropped it over to my Kudo location, which will add it to my web app folder. It will automatically deploy it. So when I go back to my advanced tools, and I go up to the top, and I go to my overview, maximize this again. I can click on here, Video Demo 2, Azure Websites, and this should give me the content that I need. So it's loading up now. Hopefully it'll all go smoothly. And as always, when we load up our web application for the first time, it does take a couple of seconds to actually load properly, but once it's been deployed and loaded once, it's much quicker the second time. So here's our application, and here is all of our data, and if we were to look at our local host, we can see that even though the session's expired, that data is all the same as what we have here. Okay, so that video was a very quick overview of how to set up Azure for a database and database server, create a database, add data to our database, create a Vaadin application that connects to our cloud database, establish our connection string, establish all of the other elements that we need, edit our POM XML, include our drivers so that we can actually connect to our database, test it on localhost, and then deploy it to our Azure service. Hopefully this has been of use to you.